Hello and welcome to Mentora IAS. I am your friend and your guide, Safir, in this particular journey, and I will be helping you understand one of the most important milestones that you have to cross while you actually are on the path of becoming a civil servant. So this entire journey of becoming a civil servant starts with the very first stage of the UPSC Civil Services as well as Forest Services Examination, that is called the preliminary examination, which basically comprises two different papers. Okay, and we are usually focusing on the paper that happens in the first half. But when we talk about the paper in the second half, now that eventually has become the game changer, the eliminator, the frustrator, or the Herculean task as many call. So yes, in this particular video, we are going to talk about that very important milestone which has become the eliminator and which we fondly call as the Civil Services Aptitude Test. So this particular Civil Services Aptitude Test needs to be first of all decoded, and after decoding we need to realize why exactly are we laying so much emphasis on this. Okay, so this particular video would be one particular video where I expect you to not just sit back and relax, but rather take control in your hand. Okay, grab a pen and paper, and subsequently wherever I ask you to solve a question, try solving it. And by the end of this particular video, I promise you two things. One, you will be having a renewed perspective about CSAT examination, and second, you will be more serious about clearing this examination. So if you want to become a civil servant, fasten your seat belts and come with me, because the flight is about to take out for your own destination, that is basically Labasna. Okay, so let us begin with this particular session now. So we will first of all decode what exactly is the Civil Services Aptitude Examination, and beyond that we will be understanding what exactly are the nuances of it. So in this particular session we are going to cover about what exactly is CSAT and why is it important. Okay, the second thing we are going to talk about is basically what exactly is the scheme of this particular examination. Then we are going to talk about how exactly the questions have changed over the past and why exactly is it so feared by so many students, and why exactly the students are not able to counter this particular examination very effectively. Okay, then we will be moving towards the next part about why exactly students are failing, why exactly the aspirants are failing in this particular examination. Then towards the end I will be talking about how exactly can you attempt this particular paper, how exactly are you going to approach this entire problem so that this becomes a friend instead of a foe for you. Okay, and the most important part, when you are in the examination, what exactly do you need to do? How exactly do you understand what exactly is my behavior? How do I have to control it? What exactly will be my mentality? Now that is something that you need to very clearly understand. Okay, so when we talk about this particular examination, let us first of all clear a very important aspect related to it. That is it something which is called CSAT as we know it, or is it called something else? Okay, let me clear this at the very beginning. So when we talk about the UPSC Civil Services Examination, so with respect to the examination, the official name of this particular paper is General Studies Paper 2. That is basically when you talk about the preliminary examination. So the preliminary examination has two legs on the same day. And this particular leg, where you basically are focusing more on the aptitude as well as analytical skills, that is something which is called General Studies Paper 2 of the Civil Services Examination. So CSAT is basically more of a colloquial term. Okay, this is something that we people actually use when we talk in terms of students. So it is an informal term. Okay, but the formal term what UPSC uses for it is basically General Studies Paper 2. Okay, and the entire notification of the UPSC examination, and in fact now I'll also be showing you the first page of the you can say what we actually call the CSAT paper. Okay, and then you will realize that the official name of this particular paper is actually CSAT. It's not CSAT, it's General Studies Paper 2. This is basically what you find as your second paper between 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Okay, so now we are going to talk about what exactly is the correct way of approaching this particular paper after we have clarified the nomenclature. Now when we talk about why exactly is this important, okay, so it is important because you might have heard in a lot of interviews by various toppers, okay, and in the recent years even the all India rankers, all India toppers of this particular examination, especially in the civil services realm, they basically have emphasized on the importance of CSAT or the General Studies Paper 2. Why exactly is that? Because this particular paper has a very important and very peculiar characteristic with it, that it is just of qualifying nature. Okay, so when this hits us that okay, this is something which is of qualifying nature, so it means that we do not have to have any kind of you can say special kind of attention towards this particular paper, that is exactly where you fail. And this is exactly what I am going to dismantle today. Okay, so we will analyze blow by blow, bit by bit, what exactly goes wrong in this particular paper, not just in terms of your attitude, but what also happens inside the you can say the examination hall. So that is what we are going to understand. Okay, in particular I would like to actually point out what exactly the topper of UPSC 2023 basically said in one of his interviews. Despite being an IITian, okay, a topper in both his undergraduate as well as postgraduate degrees of the electrical engineering, this particular individual, he emphasized that I scored 67 marks in my CSAT. Had I scored a mark less, I would have not been an AIR 1 topper. Okay, so what does this tell you? This tells you two things. One, if you feel that this particular examination is actually biased towards engineers because they know things in a sense that they have better numerical abilities and things like those, this is something which completely shatters that particular phenomenon. So if you are an engineer coming from mathematical background, or you are someone who has come from science as your background, do not presume that this is something you would know. Now the second thing, okay, it doesn't matter you basically come from a technical background or a humanities background or a non-technical background. Okay, everyone has to score that minimum qualifying number of marks, or it is going to cost you an entire good attempt and an entire good year. So all your year's hard work is dependent upon clearing this particular paper. So that is basically its importance. Now let us talk about the different dimension of how exactly this particular you can say test makes relevance for us. Okay, so one of the primary questions to address is why exactly do we need this particular paper in the first place? Because what we are talking about is civil services, and when we talk about civil services, here you are not supposed to be crunching numbers all the time. That is usually the notion that we attach to it. But just tell me, imagine this, okay, that you basically have to evaluate the outcomes or performance of a scheme. Okay, you have to evaluate what exactly has been the performance of a scheme. So with respect to any scheme, when you talk about the idea of India, so India basically is based upon the idea of welfare of people. So we are basically a welfare state. Now this is something that we are going to cover in polity as well. So it means that in India the government works for the welfare of the people. But how does it generate that amount of money? Because in order to give any kind of services to anyone, you would have to pay money. But where exactly are you paying this money? This money is actually paid using the taxation resources, and this tax is something that we all pay, either in the form of indirect taxation or in the form of income tax or direct taxation. Okay, so technically it is public's money, a part of which is used for public welfare by delivering various kinds of services. So you would definitely want to know what exactly is happening with respect to your own money. And what exactly do we do for that? We actually question the government. We have various methods of questioning it. Our representatives in the parliament do it. Our representatives in the state legislative assembly do it. For that matter, you as a citizen can do it through the Right to Information Act. But in order to answer you back, the ministers, the departments, the bureaucrats, they basically have to crunch these numbers. They have to come up with this data analysis that where exactly the money was spent, and with respect to the money spent, what exactly has been the outcome from that particular scheme, who have benefited and to what extent. Okay, how does this help us? This helps us in refining policies. This helps us in understanding what exactly have been the loopholes that need to be plugged in, and subsequently this will ensure better delivery of the services. The next thing, okay, talk about any kind of crisis situation. Okay, now with respect to crisis situation, how it could be imagined. This could be in case of a disaster. Okay, it could be a flood like, cyclone like, landslide like situation. Okay, it could be a pandemic. We have been reeling under the stress of pandemic for the past few years. Now it has waned, but it has not completely disappeared. Okay, it could be some kind of unrest. So that could be unrest among the people. Okay, so in such situations, you are supposed to be understanding the pattern. You are supposed to be understanding the standard operating procedure, and you need to take steps. So decision making is one of the most important, you can say, job profiles that you will be having as a civil servant. But in order to take that decisions, you should have the ability to analyze the situation. What exactly is the severity or gravity of the situation? Okay, and this is why it becomes very, very important. Okay, just imagine that you basically are trying to come up with a infrastructure project in your particular district. Okay, and when you actually float a tender for this, now the contractors are going to bid for this. Now it is upon you to decide who is exactly offering what and at what cost. Okay, and then based upon that you are going to take a call on whom to give this particular tender. Do you think that happens without any kind of mathematics, without any kind of understanding of the things? The third thing, orders that come. Okay, so execution of orders. Whatever orders have come from the superiors, that needs to be executed. These orders, this standard operating procedure will be a written document. You need to interpret this written document in the correct thing, and that is basically how you come to the understanding that you need the ability to correctly interpret things, to correctly analyze data, to ensure that you know the patterns emerging, and then subsequently make the decisions. This is what makes a civil servant a well-rounded person, and for that, one of the most important ways to check this is basically having an aptitude based test. Okay, that's the reason we have this particular examination with us. Now, when we talk about the influence of the CSAT, or what we call as CSAT or the General Studies paper 2, what exactly has been its influence in the first paper's cutoff? Now, when I tell you that second paper is basically of qualifying nature, it basically means that there is a certain minimum threshold of marks that we need to get. And after you have secured this amount of marks, you basically have cleared this particular paper. It doesn't matter how high you score, you just have to clear a bare minimum cutoff. But in the first paper, where we put in all our heart and soul throughout the year, there is something where we have to see what exactly comes the cutoff. So now when you talk about UPSC, in order for it to evaluate or assess the competency of aspirants, it basically has to select a few number of people or aspirants from the pool of the you can say aspirants taking up the preliminary examination. So about 13 to 15,000 individuals are selected every year after the preliminary examination for the mains examination, and from these we basically pick out the best, and then the first you can say 2,000 or 3,000 individuals are then you can say called for an interview. Okay, now with respect to getting these 13 to 15,000 students, now you need to set some kind of cutoff with respect to the first paper. Now if the second paper is very, very tough, if the second paper has been very, very tough, what happens is it becomes very difficult for a lot of people to actually score the minimum qualifying marks. And in that particular scenario, the cutoff of the first paper is the one which is reduced, because you would need that amount of aspirants in order to give a fair chance to a lot of people to display their competency. And this is exactly how you see the cutoff trends have been showing. So if we talk about the cutoff trends of the first paper of the preliminary examination for the past few years from 2018 till 2024, we see that there has been a consistent decline in the cutoff. Okay, and with 2023 being a marked exception, because 2023 UPSC Civil Services Examination preliminary papers were supposed to be one of the toughest that were there of the time. Okay, and you can yourself clearly see what exactly has been the cutoff. Why? Because both the papers, the first paper as well as second paper, were tough, and because of the extreme you can say difficulty that people were facing in the second paper, the cutoff had to be reduced so that some sufficient number of aspirants could be selected for the next phase. Okay, so that is basically your you can say the cutoff. So this is how you basically see the difficulty level of CSAT influences what would be the cutoff of the first paper. So that is why it is very important for you to go ahead. You will have to ensure that you focus and you practice this particular examination sufficiently, and then subsequently go to the next phase. Okay, now when we have understood this particular thing, okay, now let us get ahead. Now let us talk about what exactly this paper comprises. Okay, so this paper basically has got 200 you can say marks as its total marks, and basically these 200 marks are evenly divided amongst 80 questions. Okay, so these 80 questions, so there are 80 questions which have a maximum of 200 marks. Okay, so this basically means that every question will carry 200 by 80, that basically is 2.5 marks. So every correct answer gives you 2.5 marks, but this is not the only thing. There is negative marking as well. Okay, so basically now the negative marking, so this is for every correct attempt. For every correct attempt, this is our score. Okay, and for every incorrect attempt, you lose 1/4 of this marks. Okay, so you basically have a negative attempt as well. So every incorrect attempt, you are basically going to lose about 0.88 marks. Okay, so that is what you are going to lose here. Apart from that, what is the time allowed? 2 hours, 120 minutes. Okay, so in 2 hours you have 120 minutes, and in those 120 minutes you have to solve for 80 questions. So this basically tells you that the time per question would be 120 minutes divided by 80. Okay, this will give you 1.5 minutes. So this is basically the math. 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes is 90 seconds, and you have 2.5 marks per question. Okay, so what does this tell us? This tells us that for every question, normally you should be taking 90 seconds, and for every correct answer you will be getting 30 marks. Now the nature of this examination is only qualifying. So it means that you need to secure a bare minimum number of marks, and that is 33% of 200. So when you calculate it, 33% of 200 comes to be 66.67. Okay, so 33% of 200 is 66.67 marks, and this is what people are not able to score, 66 marks. Okay, and exactly this conundrum is needed to be attained into a very special kind of attention. It deserves that attention. Okay, so now this is the scheme of the paper. So I hope this is something which is clear with you. Okay, now let's go ahead. Now talking about what exactly is the syllabus that we have with respect to this particular paper. So when you go with the official notification of the paper, that is the UPSC's official notification where all the syllabus is given. Okay, so there the syllabus that has been given is that this particular paper 2, okay, that comprises 200 marks, and the things that actually are asked in this particular paper are comprehension, interpersonal skills including communication skills, logical reasoning and analytical ability, decision making and problem solving, general mental ability, and basic numeracy. Okay, so amongst this, okay, not a lot of questions come from this. Over a very long period of time, not a lot of questions have come from this. Okay, with respect to data interpretation, okay, with respect to data interpretation, that is graphs and tables, there have not been a significant number of questions since 2018. Okay, then at the same time, apart from that, there have been a significant number of questions from comprehension, logical reasoning and analytical abilities, and basic numeracy. Okay, so that is why we actually divide it in 3 different verticals, that is called reading comprehension, quantitative aptitude, and logical reasoning. Okay, and this is exactly where the second myth comes up with respect to the you can say aspirants. What we feel is that because we have prior background of one of these, okay, we could have been good in English, we could have been good in mathematics, we could have been really good in solving puzzles, and we basically say that okay, I have the you can say grip in one of these particular subjects, and subsequently it is not going to be a very difficult thing for me. Okay, but exactly this is where we go wrong. How? We are going to see that. Okay, so I hope this is something which becomes clear, that predominantly when you talk about the number of questions, so they come from comprehension, logical reasoning, and quantitative aptitude. Okay, now when we talk about the various kinds of mistakes that people actually commit, okay, so the first mistake is misreading this particular term qualifying. When you misinterpret this particular term, that this is something which is a piece of cakewalk, this is not going to work out, absolutely not going to work out. Why? Because this particular paper is something where your decision making matters a lot. Now you would say how? Now in this particular paper, what basically happens is that you have got 120 minutes. Okay, we have seen this, that this particular paper with respect to the scheme, we have 120 minutes. Now these 120 minutes are actually allocated in the time slot of 2:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Okay, this is usually the time slot where people have taken lunch and eventually most of us actually take a nap. So your brain is actually in a slower mode already. Now the next thing, after the first paper, you feel exhausted. Okay, this is a very natural feeling that people get exhausted after the first paper, because you can expend a lot of energy for solving those questions. Okay, that is the second issue that happens with respect to this particular paper. Okay, and the third one, this 120 minutes, sometimes it does happen that we do not feel how fast they run away. Just because our mind is slower, we have been exhausted, and subsequently we feel like this is something which is a very easy thing to do. Why? Because technically if you need 67 marks, if I answer 30 questions correctly and only 30 questions, so 30 into 2.5 gives me 75 marks. So out of 80, if I solve only 30 questions correctly, I would be on the other side. But the sad part, we are not able to find those 30 questions which can be solved correctly. Okay, because no one section actually has got exactly 30 number of questions, and even if they do, you will not be able to solve all of them together. Okay, so that is basically why I said that we have a very you can say wrong perception of this particular word qualifying, and this is exactly what makes us lackadaisical on this particular front. Okay, the next thing, we have grip. We definitely have grip. We have some amount of background knowledge. We may be good at certain things. We may be very fast at calculations. But the point being, we are not so great at the other fronts as well. Okay, and this is where we actually take up one of the biggest gambles. And that is why we need to understand that this particular question needs to be tackled in a very different kind of way. You cannot be relying on one or two things. You need to have sufficient grip in all the three, and especially your own strength. Okay, now that strength could be in quantitative aptitude, that could be in reading comprehension, that could be in logical reasoning. That is your choice. Then because of these two, what happens is that we delay this particular practice well till after the notification has been released in the month of February. So because after you are focusing on this particular examination much later, okay, in the entire year, what happens is that the time that you have between the prelims and this particular you can say practice is very less, and during that particular time you have to manage revision, you have to manage your mock test, you have to manage your previous year questions analysis, and this is exactly where you have a lot of pressure coming into your head, and that is where mistakes happen. Okay, so these are basically the common mistakes that the aspirants usually do, and being your mentors here, okay, it is our duty, we are duty bound to make you understand this, and at the same time keep you at your toes that you need to take this seriously, distribute this entire thing over a year, and gradually you become more confident on this particular paper. Okay, now the next thing, what exactly has been the nature of the questions asked? So over a period of time, the nature of questions asked have been drastically changed. Okay, before 2017, the questions were relatively more direct, they were pretty simple, okay, and they could be done in a very easy manner. But after 2017, we have seen significant changes in the paper. We are going to see some of the questions that have been asked, and subsequently now is the time when I am showing you one of the questions, I would request you pause this particular video and do two things. Okay, first of all, you pause the video, that's the first thing. Okay, the next thing that you do is solve the question. Okay, but when you solve the question, use a stopwatch. Use a stopwatch to monitor the time taken. If you do this thing very seriously, I can guarantee you that this is going to significantly help you accelerate your process of becoming a civil servant. Okay, so do this, start your stopwatch, then start solving the question, every single question that comes in the next page. Okay, so because of the paucity of the time, I will not be able to pause for you, but I would request you to pause. I will clear the field so that you can read the question as well as the you can say the passage which is there with it. Okay, So we are going to do some of the previous year questions as samples here. We are not solving it. I'm just wanting you to, you can say, solve this on your own. Try to see what exactly is your capability. So this is the first question that is there. Okay, this was asked in 2019 Civil Services Aptitude Test or GS paper 2. Okay, so you basically have to solve this particular question. I'll just place it here so that you can find this particular thing, or I'll close it. Okay, so pause this particular video and solve this particular paper, solve this question on time. Okay, now I'm moving to the next one. So this particular question, what I want to explain here is that you see this particular question here. The question is not about having any kind of you can say conventional understanding that we have with respect to solving the questions. Here what exactly is the case? Here we see that the question asks what is the most logical and rational inference from this passage. Okay, so you have to read this particular passage, you have to evaluate what exactly is the message that is given, and you have to give the most important and logical and rational inference out of these four. Now these are basically the types of questions that we usually do not encounter in our school day or in our any other competitive examinations. You can take up CAT, you can take up SNAP, you can take up IIFT, you can take up any examination. You are not going to find such questions in a lot of you can say quantities. Okay, for on there you basically have to read the passage, you have to understand it, answer the questions based on the passage. So there are certain other questions, but here the questions are like this. You have to consider the passage in the entire totality. Okay, that's the thing. Now let's move on to the next question. Okay, the next question is this. Now this is UPSC 2025. You can pause this question and you can solve this particular question again. Okay, now when we talk about this particular you can say question, so here the question is which reflects the best critical message. So which of the following options is the you can say the most critical message conveyed by the passage? Again you have to read the entire passage in its totality, and after that you basically are going to solve this particular question. So some of us basically have this particular idea in our mind that we first go with the questions and then we go to the passage in order to find that answer. You are not going to locate that answer here. Okay, it is said that the most critical message that is there in this particular passage, that is what you have to answer, and this is exactly where things become very subjective. Unless you take this thing out, okay, what exactly is the most critical thing, you will not be able to answer this question. Okay, now I am going to show you the third type of question. Okay, that is usually asked in the UPSC examination. So this is 2025, the most recent paper. Okay, now this is basically 2025, the third type of question. You can pause it right now and you can solve this question as well. Okay, so when we talk about this particular question, so this question is about, with reference to the above passage, what is the assumptions that have been made. Again you have to read this and you have to find out these assumptions, and these are the questions. Mind you, anyone who's thinking that my English is good, I can solve these questions, this is where everyone goes wrong. Why? Because we are unable to understand the you can say the question behind it, what exactly could be the assumptions. Okay, so this is why it is very, very important to take this particular examination seriously, that no one domain that you might be good at is going to help you clear this examination. Most of the students are going to attempt this question wrong. Okay, and there are several questions that are basically there with respect to this kind of question. Okay, so this is the reading comprehension part. So in the reading comprehension part, what we are not doing, we are not finding out answer to one word questions. We are not finding antonyms or synonyms or trying to find out the meanings, which are usually the conventional papers. Okay, here we are reading the passage completely and then we are trying to evaluate the most critical message, the most logical inference, or for that matter, what are the assumptions needed. How do you practice this? This is something which can be practiced with only one source: reading your newspapers and understanding what is coming in the news. You may not have any kind of background, but at least you should know what exactly is the message being conveyed in that particular article. And that is where newspaper becomes a very indispensable tool. Okay, so this is the linkage, not just with current affairs, but also with CSAT. Take it seriously and you are going to excel. And if you are not taking it seriously, you are going to suffer with this. Okay, that's the thing. Next, when we talk about logical reasoning, so there is a particular section in logical reasoning that is called direction sense test. Okay, a very simple kind of you can say concept, and with respect to the direction sense test, I am going to show you how exactly the questions have been different. So this question basically comes up from 2022. Okay, you can pause this particular video and you can solve this particular question. Okay, so this particular question basically comes from direction sense test. Now that was there in 2022. Okay, now this particular question was there in 2019. Okay, in 2019 this was a similar question based upon the direction sense. You can pause this video and you can solve this question. Okay, but do everything with the same stopwatch technique. And now this is the question which came up in 2024. Okay, so in the 2024, what was the only difference if you have actually solved this particular question? Okay, so you will see that there is only one difference in this particular question, and that is now you have got an angle. And this not just turns the game, this also turns heads in the examination. Okay, why? Because it's not just 225 degrees turn, it is also to be taken in the clockwise sense. Same direction sense test, this is the, you can say, variation that came up in 2024. So this is basically what I'm trying to tell you, that the questions have evolved. Okay, now they are merging both the things together, not just logical reasoning but also your concepts on aptitude. Okay, are you able to understand what exactly would be the angle of 225 degrees? Can you break it into similar angles? Okay, and only then you are able to solve this particular question. So even if it is logical reasoning, if you are not good with your mathematics and especially the angles, this question is gone for you. And this is a very simple question the other way around. Okay, so this is basically logical reasoning. Now let me talk about quantitative aptitude. In quantitative aptitude, we have one very important concept of percentage, and this is basically how the concepts have been with respect to the percentage. Okay, so this was the question in 2019 on percentage. Okay, a clear-cut simple question with respect to percentage. You can pause the video, you can solve this question. Okay, and with every question I would want you to write down the time that you are taking either to solve the question or to give up the question. I would want you to write that time down. Okay, so this is the question for 2019, a clear-cut straightforward question, what is needed to be done. This is basically 2022. Again, this is how you see that in this particular question, if you solve this particular question, this is basically you need to relate how exactly the three numbers are related. Okay, it is not just about finding what is exactly the you can say the value which is greater, what exactly is going to be the value. You have to find out the relation between the three. Integration of both quantitative aptitude and logical reasoning. Okay, and now 2025, this question. Pause the video, do your questions. Okay, so this video is actually to open up your eyes. How exactly the questions have changed? They all come from percentage, but how have they been different? So in this particular manner, we need to understand that there is a significant, you can say, incremental level of difficulty with respect to this examination that we need to address. Okay, so that is basically what we need to do with respect to this examination. Now this is something which is called data sufficiency. This particular concept is called data sufficiency. Okay, here you basically are given two sets of statements. Okay, and you have been given a question. You have to answer the question using the hints of the statements, and the options are basically given in such a manner that if you can be answering this question only with the help of one statement, which is either of them, or for that matter, do you need both these statements, or even if you want to solve this question, these are inadequate. Okay, so all of these basically are here. So this type of question is called data sufficiency. Now this particular question is a decision making type of question. Okay, so you can pause the video again and you can solve for this question. Okay, 2025 UPSC. Now in a similar fashion, data sufficiency question have also been asked, okay, in a different manner. Now this is basically how again you see a question on number system coming with respect to seating arrangement. Okay, so it basically talks about a number that has got the sequence of the digits arranged in a certain fashion. So this entire you can say description is basically of that particular question. Okay, you have to work here line by line, and then subsequently you have to find what exactly is going to be the answer. Okay, so judging by the length of this particular question, I'm not very sure that all of you are going to attempt this question, but still this is basically how questions have been asked in the civil services examination. And when you are sitting in that particular paper, you basically would want to have those questions at least done with which you have got friendship. But the point is, the friendship is not going to be enough. You need to have practice in order to solve these questions. Okay, so if you are solving these questions, I'm sure you must have understood what exactly is the issue here. Okay, so it is not just about how exactly these questions need to be solved, it is also about what exactly needs to be done to remediate this situation. So the remedial measures that need to be taken up are that, first of all, we need to revisit our concepts. Doesn't matter how well or how frightening they are for us. Okay, they could be very enjoyable, they could be very frightening, but they have to be done. Why? Because we want to be civil servants and no one else can do that. Okay, so that is the first thing. Understanding and redoing all your concepts, and it is of no shame that you basically do it from any kind of source that you have. The second thing, after you have understood this, now you need to practice, and you need to practice it very, very consistently. Okay, so it doesn't mean that every day you are going to devote 3 hours for UPSC Civil Services aptitude test, but you need to practice every single day at least for 1 hour on these questions. And the level of questions are going to be gradually taken up higher in the difficulty. Okay, that's the second one. Then we need to very properly you can say study the past 10 years previous year questions. So every single question should be solved individually by us. We should know what is the approach to various questions. Okay, that is going to help us in this. Then you need to have weekly mocks. Every weekend have one mock test of this particular aptitude test, okay, with respect to any of the you can say resources, or you can be taking up any of the previous year questions, and subsequently you can be understanding what exactly is your level currently, and you need to improve it. Okay, it doesn't mean that if you are able to score 67 in one of the papers you are going to leave that practice. No, this needs to continue. Okay, and then what do you understand with respect to the duration for practice? So the duration for practice cannot be just for 2 or 3 months. This is a game which is a marathon. Okay, every time you have to do it for a period of time consistently. To 6 to 8 months is something that I recommend. Okay, so it basically means that as soon as you gain some amount of stability with respect to your general studies subjects, okay, you should start with CSAT right away. Why? Because this is going to make sure that by the end you are not burdened with practice. At that particular time you know what exactly is the approach that needs to be taken, and subsequently you will be able to at least fare through with this particular tumultuous journey in a very smooth manner. Okay, so that is very important. Okay, so the ideal time for preparation is somewhere in August or September. You should be starting it and you should be seriously doing it. Okay, and that is basically the concept here. Now the next thing, what exactly is the strategy for aspirants? So I am going to give you a 3-pronged strategy, because we can be expecting this video to be watched by 3 different kinds of aspirants. The first one are basically the ones who come from humanities background. Okay, you are basically coming from humanities background, or for that matter you might be coming from a non-mathematical background. You have left mathematics long back. Okay. The second one basically would be the one who basically have got you can say mathematics or engineering background. So you are familiar with this particular concept. And the third one are basically working professionals. So with respect to the humanities, when we talk about the humanities background, so here you may be having grip on understanding texts. Okay, so that is your strength. But with this strength you will also need to hone your logical reasoning questions. Okay, so for you, you have to strengthen comprehension, okay, then at the same time you have to do logical reasoning, that is LR. The next thing, you should be doing a analysis of the last 10 years of the most frequently asked topics of the UPSC examination with respect to aptitude questions. Okay, so you need to have grip on certain chapters, okay, like average, percentage. For that matter, you might be needing some amount of you can say ratio proportion. Then you might be needing number system. These are simple chapters. Okay, and lot of questions basically come from these chapters. Okay, and most frequently repeated are these. So that is going to be your approach. You need to master comprehension. Most of your attempts are going to come from here. You need to be very good with your LR. Okay, and you need grip on at least these topics. Now when you're talking about engineering background, so you basically have to have good grip with respect to your quantitative aptitude. So quant is your strength. Okay, but at the same time you have to master LR. Without this, it is not going to work. And the third thing that you need to do is basically reading comprehensions, especially in the reading comprehension or the comprehensions, you need to focus upon central idea, most logical inference, those kinds of questions here. Okay, these are the questions you should not miss as engineering or mathematics students. Now with respect to working professionals, you do not have a lot of time, so I cannot be asking you to do this. So for you, it is basically very important that you identify from the previous year questions what exactly are the topics that you find difficulty with. You are not able to solve this question, you cannot recollect the approach and practice these questions. Okay, the only thing that you can do is practice, 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 and this is something that is going to help you tremendously with respect to this particular paper. Okay, so that is going to be your strategy, but this is not a strategy for 1 month, 2 months or 3 months. I am not going to joke about it. Okay, you need to do it for at least 6 to 8 months dedicatedly every single day. 1 comprehension, 5 quant questions, that is very important. Okay, or 1 comprehension, 3 quant question, 2 LR questions, very important. You should be doing it every day. Okay, so that is something like you are having your own kind of you can say nutrition for your brain. Now talking about exam time tips, the first tip that I can offer you, do not panic at all. Do not panic. Okay, do not let your first paper's performance affect your second paper, because if the first paper was tough, you have yourself seen the second paper is going to be in such a manner that your cutoff is going to be reduced. But if the cutoff is going to be reduced and you are not able to clear the second paper, then you are joking with yourself. You cannot do that. So with respect to the first paper, it's okay, but the second paper needs to be done with a fresh mind. So do not panic. The first thing I can tell you. Okay, that's the first thing. The next thing, okay, you would need time bound practice. You would need time bound practice. So for every at least quantitative questions, quantitative analysis questions, so your time bound should be ideally 90 seconds. This is basically what you have. So you can be talking about 90 seconds to 2 minutes per question. So basically you do not need to actually attempt all the questions, but whatever questions you are attempting, you have at most 90 seconds to 2 minutes. The next thing that you are going to do, solve easy questions first. It basically means that you need not solve the questions in any sequence. Okay, so first solve those questions which you are able to solve. It doesn't matter it is from reading, it is from you can say logical reasoning or quantitative aptitude. Whatever you are able to solve, solve them together. And once you solve them, also mark them in the paper so that you save the time in the end. Okay, so this is something that you need to do. Next thing that you need to do, prompt decision making. You need to understand which questions are actually taking a lot of time. So if they are taking a lot of time, regardless of how well you know this particular concept, it needs to be done after some time. You would not do that question at that very time. Okay, so the very first time you are reading this particular paper, you need to understand that what questions actually appeal to your ego. Okay, and you have to be very cautious of these questions, because if they cost you any kind of time, this is going to be a disaster. So that is why we need to control our emotions, that I am very good at this topic and I will be solving this. Please do solve it, but after you have attempted all the questions that are solvable. Okay, because what is going to happen if it takes a lot of time, it is going to hamper your other attempts as well. Okay. Now if you talk about the number of safe attempts, so anytime the safe attempts will always hover in the range of 50 to 55 questions. Okay. This is what you should be ideally attempting to target with respect to your CSAT examination. Okay. You may not be solving all the 80 questions, and that is why I said 90 seconds to 2 minutes per question. Okay. But 50 to 55 questions you must be solving with high, you can say, degree of accuracy. These are basically the tips for your examination. Okay. Now towards the end, what we need to understand very, very clearly is basically what are the resources to be followed. Okay. So with respect to the resources that need to be followed, it's very important that we first of all understand that concept building needs to be done from the books that we have read in the student age or in the school age. Why? Because these were the books from where these questions actually have come up. Okay. So your fundamental concepts will actually come from NCERT mathematics textbook. So anything that you're not able to do, okay, take out that particular chapter from one of the books of NCERT from class 6 to 10, do that particular chapter. Okay. This is first of all going to build your concept, and nobody is going to ask you how you built your concept. Okay. So read this from the fundamental books, develop your concepts. Now what you're going to do, the next thing, you would need something for practice. So with respect to practice, you can be going for any of the two books. Either you could be going for Arihant Objective Arithmetic, or you could be going for Quantitative Aptitude by S. Chand or R. S. Agrawal. Okay, the author is R. S. Agrawal. So this is going to give you questions for practice that have come in various competitive examinations. So this basically takes you to the next thing, incremental difficulty of questions. Okay, so this is the next thing that you can be doing. Then what is the most important thing for you to do? You need to analyze, you need to solve every single question in the last 10 years that has come. You must be knowing if there is a solution to this, what exactly is the solution, what exactly is the approach, and what exactly is the correct answer. Only then you are going to decode where exactly are you faltering. Okay, and finally, the point is that our classes and our videos, okay, these are the ones which are going to help you reduce your burden to practice questions, because we are the ones who are going to come up with those particular questions. Okay, enormous amount of practice, great amount of you can say content with respect to understanding the concepts, and subsequently there are 3 ways of learning any kind of mathematics or concept. There could be the right way, the wrong way, the fun way. We are going to have the fun way here. So in order for you to go with other things, I would really recommend that you come to our classes, subscribe to our channel, so that we can help you add value to your own preparation. Okay. So finally, if I have to give you my closing thoughts, so here basically this particular figure that you saw in the very first, you can say, opening slide, here you are actually seeing 2 different intersections. Okay, if you pay close attention, you find that there is an intersection of 2 different curves here, and there are 3 different areas. Okay, quantitative aptitude, reading, and you have logical reasoning. So you will need an optimal number of questions that need to be attempted in order for you to qualify this examination. And with this hope that this video helped you, I would also wish you the best of luck, so that you take this examination seriously and significantly reform your own way of doing such questions. So I would really love if you actually subscribe to our channel and share this video amongst your peers, so that they can also benefit from the you can say channel and the content here. So thank you very much. Till next time, all the very best.